Imagine standing on the deck of a massive oil tanker, moving through a narrow stretch of water where one wrong move could collapse the global economy. To my left and right, the jagged cliffs of the Strait of Hormuz close in, a 21-mile-wide choke point that holds the world by the throat. For decades, this has been the Hormuz trap, a single point of failure where a few naval mines or a stray missile could plunge the planet into darkness and send gas prices into the stratosphere. But as I look north, across the sun-scorched Iranian plateau, a different vision is taking shape. It's a project so massive, so audacious, that many called it a desert pipe dream. They call it the Iran Rud, a $300 billion mega-canal designed to slice through the heart of the Middle East, connecting the landlocked Caspian Sea directly to the Indian Ocean. I'm not just talking about a ditch in the sand, I'm talking about an engineering marvel that would fundamentally rewrite the rules of global trade and finally break the trap that has defined geopolitics for a century. To understand why anyone would even dream of spending $300 billion on a canal, you have to look at the map through my eyes. Right now, the Strait of Hormuz is the only exit for nearly 30% of the world's seaborne traded oil. It is a strategic bottleneck that Iran controls like a master switch. If that switch is flipped, the lights go out in cities thousands of miles away. But there's a second problem brewing in the north. The Caspian Sea, the world's largest inland body of water, is sitting on a treasure trove of oil and gas, but it's effectively a giant lake. To get those resources to the open ocean, you currently have to rely on a tangled web of pipelines or the mercy of neighboring giants. For years, I've watched as Russia and Iran realized they shared a common nightmare. They were both boxed in by geography and Western sanctions. The solution they've revived isn't new. The idea of a trans-Iranian canal has existed since the Tsars, but the desperation is. This isn't just about moving ships. It's about creating a Suez Canal of the East that bypasses every Western-monitored choke point. We are talking about a 700-mile waterway that would have to climb over mountain ranges and survive the blistering heat of the Lut Desert. It sounds impossible, right? But when the alternative is being choked to death by a naval blockade, impossible starts to look like the only way out. The engineering scale of this project is where things get truly mind-bending. As I trace the proposed route on a topographic map, the sheer audacity of the Iran Rud becomes clear. We aren't just digging through flat sand like they did in Suez, we are talking about a path that has to traverse the Alborz and Zagros mountain ranges. To make this work, engineers have to figure out how to lift massive cargo ships hundreds of feet above sea level. This would require a system of locks so sophisticated and massive they would dwarf anything seen at the Panama Canal. But the mountains are only half the battle. Once you clear the peaks, you hit the central Iranian plateau, one of the driest, most inhospitable places on Earth. I'm imagining the logistical nightmare of bringing enough water into the heart of the desert just to keep the canal from evaporating into a salt crust. The plan involves massive desalination plants on the coast, pumping millions of gallons of water inland just to maintain the canal's depth. It's an environmental transformation on a scale that feels almost like terraforming another planet. The cost is estimated at $300 billion, but in this part of the world, that money is seen as an investment in survival. If successful, this waterway would cut thousands of miles off the journey from Europe to India. I see it as a direct challenge to the traditional maritime routes controlled by the West. By carving a path through the Iranian heartland, they aren't just building a canal, they are building a fortress of trade. They are creating a corridor where the U.S. Fifth Fleet has no jurisdiction and no way to intervene. For the first time in modern history, the Hormuz trap wouldn't just be avoided, it would be made completely irrelevant. While the engineering sounds like a triumph, the geopolitical shockwaves are what keep me awake at night. This isn't just a construction site, it's a massive shift in the global balance of power. By linking the Caspian Sea to the Indian Ocean, Iran and Russia are essentially building a backdoor to the world. Currently, every major maritime trade route is a blue water game, heavily influenced by Western naval supremacy, but the Iran route changes the game to land-water. I see this as the ultimate insurance policy. If the West tightens sanctions or threatens a blockade in the Mediterranean or the Red Sea, the East now has a private highway. For Russia, this is the realization of a centuries-old dream: access to warm water ports without having to pass through the narrow NATO-controlled Bosphorus Strait in Turkey. For Iran, it turns their territory from a target into a bridge. But there is a dark side to this $300 billion gamble. To keep this canal filled, I'm looking at an ecological catastrophe in the making. Dumping massive amounts of salt water into the Iranian interior could destroy local ecosystems, and the evaporation rates in the Lut Desert are so high that the canal might leave behind a trail of salt that renders the surrounding land toxic for generations. Yet, as I look at the political climate, it's clear that for the architects of this project, the environment is a secondary concern. They aren't just trying to move ships. They are trying to move the center of gravity of the global economy away from the West and into their own hands. The Hormuz trap might be ending, but it's being replaced by something far more complex and potentially more dangerous. The magnitude of this shift is finally starting to sink in for the rest of the world. As I look at the current state of global shipping, the Iran route represents a great reset of the maritime world. We are talking about a corridor that could potentially handle millions of tons of cargo annually, bypassing the Suez Canal entirely for trade between Russia, Central Asia, and India. This would strip away the leverage held by traditional Western allies and hand the keys of the global economy to a new Eastern alliance. However, the shadow hanging over this project is the sheer cost, not just in dollars, but in regional stability. To pull this off, I'm seeing a level of cooperation between Tehran and Moscow that we haven't seen in decades. They are pouring resources into a vision that effectively turns the entire Middle East into a transit hub for the East. But I have to wonder, can a project born out of desperation and sanctions actually survive the harsh reality of the 21st century? The technical hurdles are still mountainous, and the environmental stakes are high, but the motivation has never been stronger. The Hormuz trap was always a game of chicken. Who would blink first in a naval standoff? By building the Iran route, the players are simply choosing to walk away from the table and build their own room. It's the ultimate geopolitical checkmate move. If this canal becomes a reality, the map I grew up studying will be obsolete, and a new era of trade, power, and conflict will begin, flowing through a $300 billion vein cut deep into the Persian soil. As I stand back and look at the sheer scale of what's being proposed, I realize we are witnessing the birth of a new world order carved in stone and salt. The Iran route isn't just a waterway, it's the final nail in the coffin for a century of Western maritime dominance. If this mega-canal reaches completion, the very concept of a choke point changes forever. No longer would the world's energy security be held hostage by a narrow strait or the whim of a single naval fleet. Instead, the flow of power would move inland, deep into a territory where no outside power can reach it. But this $300 billion gamble carries a heavy price. I see a landscape forever altered, where ancient deserts are flooded and mountains are conquered, all to satisfy the demands of a changing global hierarchy. The Hormuz trap might be closing, but the opening of the Iran road signals the start of a much larger game, one where the maps are redrawn and the old rules of trade are burned to ash. For the first time in history, the desert isn't a barrier, it's a bridge. And as the first drops of Caspian water meet the Indian Ocean, the world will have to face a reality it never thought possible, a Middle East that no longer needs the world's permission to move its pulse. The trap is broken, But the journey into this new, uncharted era has only just begun. But let's be real, building a 700-mile trench through some of the most unforgiving terrain on the planet isn't just about digging, it's about surviving. As I look at the projected timeline, I see a race against the clock. The world is moving toward green energy, but for now, the liquid gold flowing through these pipes and tankers still dictates who holds the power. If this canal isn't finished while oil is still king, it becomes the world's most expensive white elephant. I'm also watching the neighbors. A project this size doesn't happen in a vacuum. From my perspective, countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE are watching with bated breath. If the Iran route succeeds, the traditional power centers of the Gulf lose their status as the world's gas station attendants. The tension is palpable. I can see a future where this canal doesn't just transport goods, but actually transports the center of conflict from the sea to the land. We are looking at a transformation that turns a barren wasteland into the most valuable real estate on Earth. And history tells us that whenever the stakes are this high, the risks of a blowout are even higher. The Hormuz trap might be a memory, but the Iran-Rud gamble is just beginning to heat up. The final question I find myself asking is, what happens to the people caught in the middle? Beyond the billions of dollars and the high-stakes diplomacy, I see a human landscape that will be changed forever. Entire communities along the path of the Iran route would see their ancestral lands transformed into a construction zone of epic proportions. I imagine the contrast of ancient villages sitting next to ultra-modern locks and desalination plants. It's a collision of the past and a very uncertain future. As the dust settles on the blueprints, the reality is that the 300 billion Mega-Canal is more than just a bypass. It is a statement of defiance. It tells me that the era of Western enforced maritime order is facing its greatest challenge yet. Whether it becomes a shimmering artery of global trade or a massive scar across the desert remains to be seen. But one thing is certain. The Hormuz trap has forced a move so desperate and so massive that the world will never look at a map of the Middle East the same way again. The game has changed, the board has been expanded, and for better or worse, the water is already starting to move. Looking at the horizon, the true test of the Iran route won't be found in the engineering logs or the bank accounts of Moscow and Tehran. It will be found in the silence of the Strait of Hormuz. I imagine a day where the world's most dangerous choke point becomes a ghost town, a quiet stretch of water bypassed by a massive artificial river flowing through the heart of the mountains. It's a haunting image. The Hormuz trap left behind like a rusted relic of a bygone era, while the lifeblood of the global economy pulses through a $300 billion desert artery. As I wrap my head around this vision, I realize that we are no longer talking about if the world will change, but how fast. The Iran Rud is the ultimate symbol of a world that is tired of the old rules. It is a monumental middle finger to the status quo, a project that says, if the world won't give us a way out, we will carve one ourselves. Whether this leads to a new era of prosperity for the East or becomes a cautionary tale of overreach and environmental ruin, the dice have been thrown. The trap is being dismantled, the mountains are being moved, and for the first time in a century, the power to end the world's greatest energy deadlock lies not in the hands of a navy, but in the hands of the excavators. The Mega-Canal is coming, and the world better be ready for the splash. Now, standing on the precipice of this new reality, I can't help but think about the sheer irony of it all. For decades, the world focused on the blue waters of the Gulf, watching for the slightest ripple that could signal a global crisis. We built entire military doctrines and economic strategies around 21 miles of water. But while everyone was looking at the sea, the real escape plan was being etched into the dirt. The Iran Rud is the ultimate proof that geography isn't always destiny. Sometimes it's just an obstacle that $300 billion and enough desperation can overcome. I see this canal as a bridge to a world where the old power players are sidelined and a new inland empire takes the lead. It's a gamble of biblical proportions. If it works, it's the greatest engineering feat in human history. If it fails, it's a monument to the hubris of men who tried to play God with the earth itself. But as the first excavators start to bite into the dry Iranian crust, one thing is clear. The Hormuz trap is officially on its deathbed. The gates are opening, the mountains are yielding, and the map of our world is being redrawn in real time. We are moving from an era of bottlenecks to an era of bypasses, and the ripples from this project will be felt in every gas station, every boardroom, and every capital city on the planet. The desert is calling, the water is coming, and the world will never be the same. Ultimately, as I watch the blueprints for the Iran road transition from theory to reality, I realize we are witnessing a pivot in human history. It's a move that signals the end of an era where a single narrow waterway could dictate the fate of 8 billion people. By pouring $300 billion into the parched earth, a new path is being forged, one that doesn't just bypass a physical trap, but bypasses the entire geopolitical system we've known since the end of World War II. If you had told me a decade ago that we would be discussing a man-made river cutting through the Alborz Mountains to link the Caspian to the ocean, I would have called it science fiction. But in a world where energy is a weapon and geography is a cage, the impossible becomes a necessity. I see this mega-canal as a message to every global power. The old choke points are losing their grip. The Hormuz trap might have been the cage of the 20th century, but the Iran road is the key to a 21st century where the rules are written by those bold enough or desperate enough to move the earth itself. As the sun sets over the Persian Gulf, the shadow of the Strait of Hormuz feels a little less imposing. The world's attention is shifting inland, following the scent of salt water into the desert. The stakes couldn't be higher and the cost couldn't be greater, but the race to end the world's most dangerous bottleneck is officially on. We are living through the Great Bypass, and nothing, not the mountains, not the heat, and certainly not the old maps, will ever be the same again. As I reflect on the sheer scale of this transformation, I realize that the Iran road is more than just a feat of civil engineering. It is a declaration of independence from the tides of history. For nearly a century, the global heartbeat was synchronized with the flow of tankers through a single fragile artery. But as the excavators continue their work, that pulse is shifting. We are watching the creation of a Silk Road of water, a liquid highway that turns a landlocked region into the world's most strategic junction. I see a future where the Caspian Sea is no longer a dead end, but a gateway to every corner of the globe. The $300 billion being sunk into these sands isn't just buying concrete and steel. It's buying a future where a naval blockade becomes a relic of the past. It's a bold, terrifying, and brilliant gamble all at once. From where I'm standing, the dust rising from the Iranian plateau isn't just from construction, it's the dust of an old world order settling as a new one takes its place. The Hormuz trap was a game defined by limits. The Iran road is a game defined by possibilities. Whether it brings a new era of stability or sparks a different kind of regional fire, the commitment has been made. The world is about to find out what happens when you decide that mountains are meant to be moved and oceans are meant to be joined. The bypass is open, the path is set, and the geopolitical map of our planet is being rewritten 1 mile of desert at a time. The deeper I look into the logistics of this Mega-Canal, the more I see a project that is as much about the digital age as it is about the industrial one. In my mind's eye, the Iran road isn't just carrying oil, it's carrying fiber optic cables and data. By creating this physical link, Iran and its partners are effectively building a secure underground data corridor that mirrors the waterway above. It's a total decoupling from the Western-controlled undersea cables that currently wrap around the Arabian Peninsula. I'm imagining a world where the Hormuz Trap is bypassed not just by ships, but by the very information that keeps our modern world running. This $300 billion project is the ultimate off-grid move for an entire region. It creates a sovereign zone where Western intelligence and naval pressure lose their eyes and ears. Every mile of this canal that gets finished is another mile of independence from a system that has dominated global affairs for the last century. But as the sun sets over the construction sites, the reality of the work ahead is staggering. I see thousands of workers fighting against the most extreme temperatures on the planet, carving a path through rock that hasn't been disturbed for millions of years. It's a brutal, relentless push toward a singular goal, making the Strait of Hormuz an optional route rather than a mandatory one. The desperation to break the trap is so high that the cost, the environmental impact, and the political fallout are all seen as acceptable casualties. The world is watching a giant wake up and decide to change the shape of the Earth to ensure its own survival. The era of the chokepoint is dying, and the era of the Mega-Canal is rising from the dust. As I look ahead at the sheer momentum behind this project, I realize we're reaching the point of no return. The Hormuz Trap only worked as long as there was no other exit, but the moment the first section of this canal becomes navigable, that leverage vanishes. I can almost feel the shift in the air. The realization that the $300 billion spent here isn't just for a waterway, but for a new kind of sovereignty. I'm picturing the massive desalination hubs at the port of Chabahar working around the clock to turn the Arabian Sea into a freshwater lifeline for the interior. This is more than just shipping. It's a total reimagining of what a desert nation can be. By bringing the ocean into the heart of the country, they are creating a new green belt where only salt and dust once existed. It's an attempt to literally terraform the Middle East to suit the needs of the 21st century. But as a storyteller, I have to ask, at what point does the dream become a burden? The maintenance on a 700-mile canal through a moving desert will be a never-ending war against nature itself. I see a future of constant dredging, of fighting back the encroaching sands that want to swallow this $300 billion investment whole. It's a battle of wills, man versus the earth. And while the geopolitical gains are clear, the physical reality is a reminder that even the most powerful nations are at the mercy of the environment they try to conquer. The trap might be broken, but the desert never truly surrenders. So here we are, at the edge of the abyss. As I look out over the horizon where the Persian sky meets the sea, I realize the Iran Rud is more than just a $300 billion ditch. It's the ultimate act of defiance. We are watching a nation try to outrun geography, spending its way out of a corner by carving a scar so deep it can be seen from space. It is a gamble with the soul of the earth, a desperate, high-stakes play to ensure that if the world ever tries to close the door on them, they'll simply walk through the wall they built themselves. But as the first waves of the ocean begin to creep into the heart of the desert, a chilling question remains. Have we truly ended the Hormuz trap, or have we just built a bigger one? By centralizing the world's trade into a single man-made vein, we've created the ultimate target, a $300 billion artery that, if severed, could bleed the global economy dry in days. We are trading a natural choke point for an artificial one that requires constant, brutal maintenance against a nature that never asked to be tamed. The excavators are still roaring, the mountains are still falling, and the water is still rising. The map is being redrawn in real time, and the old rules have been burned to ash. As I stand here watching the dust of the old world settle, I can't help but wonder if we've unlocked a new era of prosperity, or if we've just unleashed a monster that no one can control. The Hormuz trap is dead. Long live the Mega-Canal. The water is flowing, the clock is ticking, and there is absolutely no turning back. Welcome to the New World Order. I hope you're ready for the flood.